Go.
There's no detail too small to escape his attention.
Okay.
One moment, he's personally greeting his models, this time in New York.
La goulue, remember la goulue?
The next, he's encouraging a hairdresser to create a look reminiscent of an 1890s Paris dance hall.
Sempre comme ça. Lui è bello così, ciao.
He not only comments on the makeup, he takes over and does it himself. On model after model. Very good, you look great.
Ciao.
And Armani, who knows some English but feels more comfortable communicating in Italian, explains through an interpreter that he just can't help himself.
Di preparazione delle ragazze.
It's a long process in preparing the models' hair and makeup. And it almost seems that I really shouldn't be here. People might think it's a waste of my time, but I need to have a presence here and to sort of control what's going on in terms of hair and makeup.
You even work with the models and decide which model wears which outfit.
So è molto importante
This is a very important process because a lot of times a particular model wouldn't be able to carry a particular outfit.
Very cool, very cool, very cool, very cool.
It's an important point because Giorgio Armani's clothes are very much about attitude.
Very cool, very cool, very cool.
He has developed a reputation for a super cool yet refined look in his casual and formal wear for both men and women. Of course, there is some irony in his own wardrobe choice. You're a fashion designer. You make all these beautiful things for men and women, but you usually always wear very plain, almost the same thing every day. Why is that?
Perché io vivo con I vestiti. Parlo di vestiti, sogno i vestiti, vado al cinema e vedo I vestiti soprattutto. In più c'è un altro fattore, secondo me un tono di colore scuro, forme piuttosto aderenti al corpo aiutano a sembrare più alto, più interessante.
Giorgio Armani doesn't have to try to be interesting. His is a real rags to riches story. He was born in 1934 in Piacenza, Italy. It was a childhood ravaged by the Second World War.
Una casa distrutta dalle bombe e mio padre non aveva un lavoro sufficientemente redditizio per poterci mantenere, eravamo in 5 in famiglia. Ricordo adesso, a distanza di tanto tempo, che abbiamo veramente vissuto con la fame, quindi difficoltà economiche, certo, come molte famiglie italiane dell'epoca.
He never dreamed of becoming a fashion designer, but a temporary job in a department store made him realize he had a knack for fashion. He rose through the ranks at the store and then started working for designer Nino Cerruti. But you never formally studied, you never really went to fashion school, no?
No, questa è una cosa che stupisce molto le persone. Io ho tutto imparato invece da solo.
In 1966, Armani met Sergio Gagliotti, an architectural draftsman who became his partner in work and in life. It was Gagliotti who encouraged Armani to start designing on his own. And in 1975, they formed the Giorgio Armani Company, first making boardroom attire.
Questi sono vestiti per uomo, però secondo me anche sulla donna sono bellissimi.
Because you are known. Men, you make the clothes for men a little bit, they can wear more feminine things.
More new.
Now women can wear a little more masculine.
E questo misto di cose che io ho saputo fare da tanti anni ormai, che ha sconcertato molto il pubblico. Qualche volta ho visto perplessità, no?
We may be used to the Armani look now, but it was so revolutionary that it put him on the cover of Time in 1982. He has designed clothes for more than 150 films.
Suddenly his character started coming alive, this kind of very contemporary guy. And You know, that was the beginning of me getting into that character, was actually his clothes.
He gave Samuel Jackson a sleek new look in Shaft 2000.
He has found a way to incorporate the classic things from all those times into contemporary times.
But it's not just in the movies. So many Hollywood stars have worn his clothes to the Academy Awards over the years that Armani was asked to write the foreword to Vanity Fair's Oscar night book, which definitely boosted sales, especially for Giorgio signed copies. At Bergdorf Goodman in New York, adoring fans lined up for hours to get a peek and maybe a peck from their favorite designer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fans, including actress Glenn Close.
I have the first Armani black double-breasted blazer that I bought, and I wore it just the other day and felt fantastic in it. And it looks a little retro now.
Armani has been honored with museum exhibits all around the world and raked in a slew of awards. When he received one from Fashion Group International, devotees from music star Usher to actresses Michelle Pfeiffer and Julie Andrews to director and close friend Martin Scorsese came to pay tribute.
The interesting thing he does with textures, use of color and fabrics. And it's so inventive, and yet his classical line goes through, it's like it could be from the 1930s to the 2030s.
All of this is particularly nice for Giorgio Armani because not everyone expected his brand to endure. In 1985, Sergio Galeotti died of cancer. You were doing so well, and then your partner passed away. That must have been a very difficult time for you.
Sì, in effetti quando Sergio è mancato, mi è mancato non soltanto la persona cara vicino, ma
Both personally and
personalmente
professionally.
e professionalmente. Ho dovuto anche lottare probabilmente contro la convinzione pubblica, comune, che io non ce l'avrei fatta, che io ero un bravo designer, ma non ero un bravo manager. Quindi è stata una bella scommessa.
A gamble that paid off. Giorgio Armani's Milan-based empire has now made him the richest man in the fashion industry, with a net worth estimated at more than $4.5 billion. And it's not just fashion. The designer's elegant Milan apartment helped inspire a string of shops devoted to Armani home design products. And when he made an appearance at the New York store, a very unexpected fan showed up, famed architect Frank Gehry. The two had never met before, and Armani joked that they should work together.
Do you ever make shops?
No,
Stores?
yes, for you, yes. Allora, traduci qua, dammi la...
Giorgio Armani has not slacked off a bit. At 71, he has no plans to retire, and he's still a perfectionist who cares about every element of how his collection is presented. He takes nothing for granted. Every year, you turn out these beautiful collections. Are you ever afraid, what if the next one nobody likes?
Sono terrorizzato. Really. Comunque.
David, a statement on performance at the American Music Awards. Armani was born in 1934 in a small town south of Milan and was badly wounded by a World War II mine as a child, but recovered and launched his label in 1975. His work ethic helping him build a multi-billion-dollar empire, which included everything from perfume to a basketball team. And just days before his death, the 91-year-old opening up in a candid interview about his reputation as a workaholic. He said, "My only regret in life was spending too many hours working and not enough time with friends and family."
Good morning. This is Morning Sky. I'm your host, Sky. Now I wanted to show you that clip, the extended clip about his life and his work. That's what he was about. Life and work. Work, 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 work. He was like they call it a workaholic, but that's too cheap of a name for somebody that works that way. You just call them productive. How about that? Uber productive, super productive. He was that. And at the last clip that I just showed, it said he wished he had spent more time with friends and family. On his deathbed, you know, in the last hours of his life, Giorgio Armani was saying that he should have spent more time going to recitals, soccer games, having more, you know, wine parties with his buddies, or, you know, drinking Italian beer, I guess, or something like that. So I totally reject that. I think you can have a happy medium without sacrificing. No sacrifice has to be involved. If you have children, you can go to their recitals. You can go to their games, their soccer games. You can go to their, or football games, I guess you would say over there in Italy. You can go to their, you know, be in attendance for their graduations. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually encouraged. You should do that. However, remember that if you have some kind of there's some kind of you know, some kind of breakage, some kind of conflict. That's a conflict between working and doing something with your family or friends. Go with your family and friends, and just remember that you're still worth $4 billion, and that you're going to make sure that you make even more money, you know, outside of going to that specific event that is for your spouse or your children or your friends. All of that has to coalesce. It has to all come together. I mean, that's such a classic cliche line. I just wish I had spent more time with my family and friends. Yeah, spending more time with your family and friends, and that's the amounts to the people that are broke or unproductive, have no qualms in life. When it comes to their family, they have, you know, no qualms about, you know, being there, you know, around the clock, not producing, not creating, not building, not making. That is a sadness. That's not the tragedy is not that, you know, people are working too hard or working too smart and do too many things at one time. The tragedy is that people do too little. They don't work enough. They just want to do enough to get by and get enough money to get some eggs and, you know, turkey sausage and a nice car and some a nice living room set or something like that. I mean, they don't really take into account the fact that people are literally trying to, you know, get to that lifestyle where he died with over, you know, multiple billions of dollars in the account. But that's not the point. The point isn't the money isn't everything. It's the only thing. I'm just saying it as a measure of his abilities to create beautiful patterns and different fabrics and textures, and for men and women. That's extraordinary. That's something that should be praised. So definitely smoke your fashion packs to Giorgio Armani, because he definitely changed the game. He was one of the living legends. I mean, a lot of people say he was, you know, nobody was better than him other than Coco Chanel in a lot of, you know, ways and standards. So we have to just look at that. I'm gonna try to find another clip. Let me see. I'll finish out this clip.
David, a statement on his official Instagram said that Giorgio Armani worked until his very last days and that he died at home peacefully in his beloved Milan, surrounded by his family. David.
Yeah, a remarkable legacy, Matt. Thanks. When we come back tonight, anyone who's ever watched The Sound of Music will want to see this. We take you to
Okay, you're talking about something different now.
world of fashion has lost one of its greats. Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died at the age of 91. He's credited with elevating a quintessentially Italian aesthetic in his clothes and making red carpet affairs cultural moments. Joining us now is Robin Givhan, Pulitzer Prize-winning fashion critic and former senior critic at large at the Washington Post, where she worked for more than 20 years. She's the author of Make It Ours, Crashing the Gates of Culture with Virgil Abloh. It's great to see you again.
Nice to be here.
So let's talk about Armani. He really defined the look of understated elegance. How did his minimalist approach redefine luxury fashion?
Well, I don't think we would have the vocabulary to really talk about what we now call quiet luxury without Armani. And, you know, what he really did was apply this, his sensibility for very streamlined, minimalist, neutral palette to both menswear and to women's. But first with the men's, where he really made an impact, where he just kind of took the stuffing, like literally and figuratively, out of men's suiting. He took out the sort of the inner structure and allowed the suit jackets to have this kind of ease and flow over the body. And, you know, it really started to kind of epitomize an era of self-made men and wealthy men. And then when those clothes appeared in American Gigolo, like it was everything, the jig was up.
Yeah. How did he reshape Hollywood's red carpet culture?
You know, I think it's kind of hard for people to believe that there was a point where the stars would show up pretty much left to their own devices. You know, in the very early days of the Oscar red carpet, most of the celebrities were sort of dressed by the costumers from the studios. And then they were kind of left to their own devices, and there were some pretty outrageous moments. And then Armani hired a woman named Wanda McDaniel, who came in and sort of created almost a system. And Armani started dressing a lot of the celebrities who, you know, really, I think felt, you know, indebted to him for doing it, because it allowed them to get a bit of, you know, support when they're out there on the red carpet being photographed. And he dressed them in his sensibility. So it was all about sort of the classic tuxedo and elegant evening gowns. Not a ton of skin, not a lot of sheer, but very much the Armani aesthetic.
At a time when so many fashion houses have been absorbed by conglomerates, Armani is still a privately held brand. What was it about Armani the man who refused to sell?
He loved his brand. He loved working. He loved being able to control the aesthetics of it down to, you know, every detail. I mean, there definitely was a period when he considered selling. I mean, he doesn't have children. And he, you know, considered selling to the large French conglomerate LVMH. And sort of at the last minute, he decided that he couldn't do it because he really wanted to maintain the authority over sort of the destiny of the company. And, you know, it was a really attractive company to purchase because, you know, unlike a lot of the big fashion houses.
The author mentioned LVMH stands for Louis Vuitton, Moet, and Hennessy. That's LVMH, the French house. I always get his name chopped up. Let me make sure I get this right. Bernard Arnault. Bernard Arnault. He is one of the wealthiest human beings on the planet. I think his fortune is somewhere around 150 to $200 billion, something like that. Let me see. Net. Arnault. $154.3 billion. So he's one of the richest men in the world. And as you see on this specific video, oh my God. As you see in this specific video, you can see how he is doing that. Oh my God. That's such a pain in the ass. Oh my God, this is awful. Ah! I'll just play this one. Rick James, that is not its fact. What are you talking about? No, Armani, we would not have the Sgt. Pepper pirate costumes fact. There's no relation to that. Show me exact, specific evidence of this, and maybe I will retract that, but I will not retract that until you give me that specific evidence. You must be high off the PCP or something. I don't know. You must be going off of that good stuff. But anyway, he created fashion. He didn't create fashion. He created his own fashion. That's true. He didn't create fashion, though. Come on, Rick James. Stay with me. Mr. Rick James, I don't wear a pork pie hat. I wear a trilby. There's a totally different style of hat of headwear. He had a hard life. Yeah, he had a real hard life, I'm sure. You know, he had one of the finest lives ever. That's what's so great, is the fact that he worked so much. He produced so much. He was a great producer. And I'm sure that Dr. Jerome Brook is probably going to make a mention of. He's in Italy right now. He's in Florence. And I don't know how many miles away that is from Milan, but Milan is in mourning. They're having, funerary services. I don't think they're having the exact funeral, but they're having memorial services in memory of Mr. Armani. Can't cry over him. Can't shed a tear. I can't shed a tear. He had a great life. Can't drop one tear. Can't drop a single tear over him. He had a wonderful life. He had greatness. He achieved. He had the rags to riches stories. Came from humble beginnings, and to make something great and wonderful and extraordinary across the globe. I mean, that just takes everything from perfume to basketball teams. That's just extraordinary in itself. He was able to build an empire based off of his own name. That's really great. This news is bigger than Ozzy's death. That could be argued. He's saying Ozzy Osbourne's death was not as impactful as Giorgio Armani. You can argue that, but it depends on what circle you're in, because they were in different circles. Rick James, you are hitting the nail on the head. You didn't spell it right, but I know what you meant. He said, I read somewhere that he was closeted his whole life. He was not closeted in an interview he gave a few years ago, saying that he went with girls and boys. He was with women and men. He was bisexual. So that was his business. That was his way of living his life. Respect to him. I can't co-sign it, but I respect for it. That was his life. That was what he wanted to do. So I respect that. Yeah, so you're close, Rick James. Yeah, honey. Yeah. So I'm just stopping on his words at the end. I'm uplifting his life during being a child and being badly burned by a shell that was still alive, to going into the floor of the fashion houses, that the dedication and the determination that he had, that is extraordinary. I mean, it's amazing how he was in Italy. It's amazing how a lot of these stories aren't American stories anymore. These are American stories. This is a Western American story. When you go from rags to riches and you create something of yourself and you don't take no for an answer, you continue to go on, you knock down block wall after block wall, and you continue on and you don't let anyone stop you. That's an extraordinary American westernized viewpoint. I would argue that too. Yes, Rick James, yes, we are. Uplift his life, but now let's eat off of him. Exactly. That's what we're doing. I'm eating off of him right now. Pause. He slept with the most beautiful models. I think, you're right. I think he allegedly, I'm not sure if that's true, but I would imagine he had some kind of relationship with both men and women models, allegedly. I'm not, not too keen on that. They didn't really discuss that too much. And I don't think he was ever married. He certainly didn't have any children. He had no children to speak of. But that is the reality of it. Yes, sir. He was the gay Hugh Hefner of fashion. If Hugh Hefner had a few more dollars than Armani, that could be true. But I guess he was more so. You could argue that he was like the gay Hugh Hefner of fashion. He was the bisexual Hugh Hefner. He was the queer. Let's just say queer. He was queer. He was a queer Hugh Hefner of fashion. I can attest to that. I can accept that. Why do we only have 3 eyes in here? Maybe we need, and now it's 2 eyes, 3 and 2 eyes. It keeps going through 3, 2, 3, 2. Make sure there's 3,000 eyes in here. Let's get 300,000 eyes in here. I'm gonna get there. Is that what you were talking about, Rick James? I don't know what the Sgt. Pepper pirate suits, but the Italian wear that the Beatles donned, they definitely showed that. They showed that. Okay, here we go. So salute to Mr. Giorgio Armani. No, I said you were wrong about the Sgt. Pepper. Sgt. Pepper, that's what I was saying. I was saying that was wrong, but I had to say you were very close. You weren't accurate or precise, but you were close. I'll give you that much. But salute to Giorgio Armani. For the people that are out there in broadcast land, remember that if you work and work and work, that's a virtue. If you're not sacrificing yourself for your family and friends, you make only decisions that are non-sacrificial and benefits both parties. Everybody wins. Win-win situations are the best. And saying, on your deathbed, oh, I wish I just had more time with my family and friends. That's like a cop-out at the last second. It's like, come on. You wouldn't have had this great company. Some people have great times with their family and friends, but didn't create, multi-billion-dollar companies and live a wonderful life. Not just the money, but, just the lifestyle and the way you have friends and the business of being in, the spotlight and different things of that nature. So I just want to encourage everyone to say, never sacrifice, live for your family and friends, their values. Of course, don't, say that. Don't say money over my friends. That's corny. That's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. And don't say my friends over money. Definitely don't do that, because that's the reason why you have friends, because you were able to achieve something. So your family and friends come first, but, don't ever deny or mock or denounce your own wealth or your own productive capabilities. All right. I think we should go to the next topic. Let's see how we can transition into this.
Like, what's all this talk about renaming the Pentagon? What do you know about that?
Yeah, so the president is expected to sign an executive order tomorrow, Friday, and he's going to be authorizing a second title for the Department of Defense, calling it the Department of War. We can't say he's renaming it, because he would actually need authorization from Congress to rename the department. It was essentially and originally the Department of War until about 1947, when President Truman changed the name and brought in some more agencies and military institutions under its umbrella. But this is really fascinating, because in some ways, sources tell me that this is really President Trump wanting to project the military might of the United States, while also still pushing for that Nobel Peace Prize that he keeps sort of chasing and saying that he wants. So it's really interesting to see him talk about the Department of War while also saying that he's a president of peace. Gotti.
Yamiche Alcindor in Washington. Yamiche, thank you so much.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live.
Well, that's loading. I'm gonna just say, call the Pentagon the Department of War, call the Department of Killing, call the Department of Eliminating Every Enemy of the United States. That's a mouthful. That's a little longer, but as long as you're just, it's the idea of protecting individual rights from foreign invaders. That's all that matters. That's the only thing that matters. You can call it what you will. Department of Defense, Department of War. They still have war colleges, you know, dotted across the country. So I'm not trying to defend Trump. This would be a very rare, attempt at defending him. But if he wants to go to Department of War, fine. Like I said, as long as it performs its sole function of protecting individual rights, I have no problem with it. No issues. I mean, he Department of War was all the way up to, like the reporter said, 1947. And then they changed it. They had the American Air, what was the Army Air Force, AAF. Yeah, Army Air. Yeah. So they had that, to go with it. He might as well name it the Department of Offense since they complaining. Yeah, that's a good idea, King. I see you on that. Okay, this is loading for what reason I don't know. What the hell? Oh my God. Okay.
Like what?
All right, that's not fun. That's not fun. Are you serious? There's only like 2 videos or something like that?
New at 6, President Trump is reportedly planning to sign an executive order tomorrow renaming the Department of Defense as the Department of War. Fox News reports the president will roll out the proposed name change tomorrow. It would require an act of Congress to change the name of a cabinet-level department, so the order will reportedly call for using the Department of War as a secondary title for the Defense Department. It will also instruct Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to propose the legislative action to make the name change permanent. In other headlines coming out of the White House tonight,
So this is another thing. They just mentioned that it's going to be has to be an act of Congress to rename the Pentagon or the Department of Defense. He can put it on unofficial correspondence. He can put it on various memoranda. He could say many things, regarding Department of War, but it's not been official. It's not been put in as a specific name change, not yet. But he still can. President Trump can still, change it. But I just don't. He does weird little tiny things like the flag burning and stuff like that. It's like there's 2 things. First of all, it's a First Amendment right for you to burn a flag. That's a First Amendment right. That was caused in the late 1980s. Congress passed that. Secondly, in order to get rid of a tattered flag, you take it to a specific location and they burn it for you. They like tattered and weather-beaten flags are supposed to be burned. So that's another thing. But yeah, it's a nickname then. Exactly. Yeah, that's right, King Hazy. It's a nickname. I mean, he can call whatever. Like I said, we'll call it Department of Killing. That's the whole point. Killing our enemies. That's it. Eliminating the threat. Eliminating all threats against United States citizens, and getting rid of any hurt, harm, or hazard against domestic citizens from foreign invaders. That's too long a title. It's way too long. But I think Department of War is pretty straightforward. I'm not trying to, hop on the Trump wagon, but Department of War reverting that, because I always wonder, like, it used to be called Department of War. Like when I was reading about Abraham Lincoln and Civil War in America, the American Civil War. They said the War Department. I was like, what is the War Department? I mean, that's kind of, it's kind of blatant. I don't know. It seems kind of, bald. I don't know. It's a very it seems aggressive. Department of Defense seems like, we're going to defend you. We're going to make sure. But war is like, we're already fighting. Like, it's like Department of War. We're already in battle. I mean, it's weird. So let me get him out of here. What the hell?
The Trump White House is signaling a new war on drug cartels. Today, the U.S.
All right, joining us now is Secretary of Defense.
Today, you saw the video.
All right, I do want to take you out to
Okay, they're not showing up. Okay, here we go.
The president set to sign an executive order today to rebrand the Defense Department, give it a new name, an old name actually, the Department of War. That is according to two White House officials. Now, the president cannot formally change the name of the department without congressional approval, which his administration reportedly will request. In the meantime, the executive order will authorize the use of secondary titles like Department of War and Secretary of War. The Defense Department was originally called the Department of War until it was renamed by law in 1947.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the Today Show every morning on NBC.
But today, Trump's Health and Human Services
Okay, so I just think it's Department of War means we're not playing. Yeah. I think it cuts straight to the point. We go to war, but like it's going to be weird because it's going to have to be specifically a war action. I don't remember. I get my dates and my various wars mixed up, but I think the last war that was actually declared was World War II, if I'm not mistaken. Could be war. I think it was either Iraq or let me just look it up. I didn't research that much of that part. Last war. I was right. The last wars formally named and declared by the U.S. Congress were during World War II. On June 5th, 1942, the U.S. declared war on three Axis-aligned nations, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Romania. Formal declarations and authorizations of force are different. Authorizations for the use of military force, or OMFs, have instead of full war declarations. The Persian examples of military actions approved by OMF: the Persian Gulf War, the Iraq War, and the War on Terrorism, which is an inanimate object that you can't really fight. So it's like ridiculous how they call it a war on terrorism. And I don't know if this is true. This is AI generated. So. I'm looking for so it was okay. Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania. So it was true. World War II. Military engagement authorizations. It's a few more. The Vietnam War, of course. Was the Korean War? I didn't see that. Is the Korean War part of it? Korean War wasn't even on the OMF. It's wild. There it is. I always mess this up. Oh my God. All right, I'm gonna just go to this one. And it's gonna go to this. That's cute. Jesus.
Lines on this Friday. President Trump is set to sign an executive order today to begin the process of renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. The agency last held that name in the 1940s.
Desert Storm.
The
Yep.
executive
That's
order
Persian
will allow
Gulf
the
War. I
DoD
said
to
that.
start using the term Department of War as a secondary title, according to a fact sheet obtained by CBS News. And Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died. According to the Armani.
Now we're going backwards. Trying to stay on topic here.
President Trump changing the name of the Department of Defense. He's expected to sign an executive order later today renaming it the Department of War. So Doug Luzader is live in Washington, D.C. with that and more. Doug, good morning. Happy Friday to you.
Good morning. Happy Friday.
So we know the president continues to put his own stamp on the U.S. military, and a lot of these now have been done with executive orders.
Yeah, this executive order we think is going to come down today. The timing of it was a little bit of a surprise yesterday when this was announced, but we anticipated this. The president's been talking about this for a while. This would rename the Defense Department to the War Department, rename it because it goes back to its original name, which was really the majority of its existence, which was the Department of War. Up through World War II and in the late 40s, it ultimately changed to the Defense Department. The president has made it clear that he thinks it doesn't really fit what he sees as his image of the U.S. military, which is, more aggressive in posture, not just defense, but offense as well, as he has said. So he's going to do this by executive order. Does he have the authority to do this without going through Congress? We'll see. But it looks like this is going to be signed later on today.
Well, let's shift gears. He also has mentioned sending National Guard to a number of places and mentioned earlier potentially New Orleans on that list.
Yeah, it seems as though we keep coming back to Chicago as well. I mean, Chicago seems as though they're going to be first up, and there are some signs that that kind of intervention is imminent right now. And he's talked about other cities as well, Baltimore, New Orleans, and so on. They've already renewed the National Guard deployment here in Washington, D.C., as we take that deployment now through at least the end of November now.
Let's finish with this kind of on a tech front, Doug. We have seen really this administration, this president, do more with the tech industry than we've seen in a long time. He continues to reach out to top tech executives at a White House event yesterday. What was the goal yesterday?
Well, he has a much better relationship with tech executives this time around than he did the first time around. But there was a lot of reluctance on the part of kind of the tech crowd in California in dealing with him. Now they are dealing with him. And we had them gather last night at the White House talking about artificial intelligence, which is obviously a huge issue moving forward here. How that's going to be managed and the role the government will play in the development of AI and what kind of guardrails will go up remains a critical and really unanswered question now.
Yeah, Doug, and if you follow these companies like Meta that's publicly traded or Amazon, the amount of money, the billions they are spending on AI is staggering.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just the acquisition of chips from NVIDIA and so on. I mean, these are
President Trump says he plans to sign an executive order renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. An official renaming of the department does require congressional approval, but Trump's order is expected to say the new name can be used in official and ceremonial contexts.
Now, this is the creepy part. This is the only scary part, because in Trump's head, he's like, defense, that's just preventing others from attacking us. But with war, we can say we can go against anybody that says something because it's Department of War. We can start a war with somebody, not just defend ourselves, but we can be on the offensive, which in some cases we should be against Iran and Saudi Arabia and Russia and China and North Korea. If we could just flatten those areas, I'll be okay. Because that would bring peace to the world. That will bring a lot more stability to the earth. Just flatten Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, Saudi Arabia, all of these locations that we have tension and serious qualms and problems with. We have to look at it as such. That is the key to this. To understand how we're supposed to be a robust, strong element of our government, the DOD, and that could be the DOW again, Department of War again. And that's what I think is going on in Trump's mind. I think that's going on in his head. He's saying, shoot, I can just change the name and say, look, I know it wasn't the Department of Defense. Look, I changed the Department of War. So that's the reason why I bombed Brazil or something stupid, something that doesn't make any sense. That's the reason why, I had to, send troops to Canada or something like that. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. But, renaming the DOD seems trivial, but I think it has wider and longer implications. It's going to be a detriment if he is going to go after the wrong people and fight people for no apparent reason. That could possibly be a reason why he's changing the name of DOD to DOW or renaming it DOW. Once was before. Let me see about this video.
Today, President Trump expected to sign an executive order to rename the Department of Defense. The White House says the Defense Department, the Pentagon, is now going to go by the Department of War. While the order won't actually rename it, it will authorize Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to use it for secondary titles, whatever that exactly means, but evidently now Department of War.
Today, President Trump is expected to sign an executive order renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. His administration says the name more accurately reflects the mission of the men and women serving in uniform today. The formal renaming would require the approval of Congress, but his order is expected to say the new name can be used in official correspondence and ceremonial context. Congress established the Department of War in 1789. It was renamed the Department of Defense in 1949.
And happening today, President Donald Trump is set to sign an executive order to rebrand the Department of Defense as the Department of War. The White House says it's part of his push to project toughness for America's military. Trump cannot officially change the name without Congress, but today's order would allow the Pentagon to use secondary titles to go by its original name. The Department of War dates back to 1789 before being renamed the Department of Defense in 1947, 2 years after World War II.
President Trump planning to sign an executive order today to rebrand the Department of Defense. The Department of War will become the secondary title of the Defense Department. Department of War, by the way, was a title used back in the 18th century, and the president has stated that the name has a, quote, stronger sound.
The president is expected to sign an executive order, and he's going to be authorizing a second title for the Department of Defense, calling it the Department of War. We can't say he's renaming it because he would actually need authorization from Congress to rename the department. It was essentially and originally the Department of War until about 1947 when President Truman changed the name and brought in some more agencies and military institutions under its umbrella. But this is really fascinating because in some ways, sources tell me that this is really President Trump wanting to project the military might of the United States while also still pushing for that Nobel Peace Prize that he keeps sort of chasing and saying that he wants. So it's really interesting to see him talk about the Department of War while also saying that he's a president of peace.
Changing the name from Defense to Department of War. What is the timeline on that?
I've said stand by on it, and that's what I'll say again, because that's ultimately the president's call. But I'll say this: we won World War I, and we won World War II, not with the Department of Defense, but with a War Department, with the Department of War. As the president has said, we're not just defense, we're offense. We're reestablishing at the department the warrior ethos. We want warriors, folks that understand how to exact lethality on the enemy. We don't want endless contingencies and just playing defense. We think words and names and titles matter. So we're working with the White House and the president on it. Stand by, but we might have some new signage here, right over here, eventually.
I look forward to it.
Really bad.
If there is any goodness to come out of it, let it be the offense. Like I said, get rid of Saudi Arabia, get rid of Iran, flatten this place, help Israel flatten Gaza. If you must, help Ukraine flatten Russia, or just on our terms, flatten Russia, on our terms, flatten Gaza, flatten Iran. Give out messages, like I always say, give out messages. Hey, look, you might want to get out of here. You got 72, 96 hours, something like that. You got 4 days to clear out, get your belongings, get your stuff, move, get to a different location, because we're about to do some damage now. We're about to do something serious. We're about to destroy something. It's going to be nasty. It's going to be ugly, and it's going to be, brutal, but it's going to be worth it, because we have our enemies. We have enemies. I mean, it's amazing. It's like, I don't understand why we're just like fiddling about while North Korea just stands, the evil, horrific dictator of that country, of also the horrific dictators of Iran and Russia and China, Putin, Xi, and I can't pronounce his name, the Iranian. But that is the key to all this, to destroy them, to just not only dismantle them, but destroy and completely rearrange their entire structure. Because that's the whole point. It's not just to stop them from their capacity to make war. That is important, and that is obviously a sticking point in a very serious matter. However, the idea of crushing their soul of battle, that is the key. Crushing their will to even consider going against the United States of America and its allies, to create in a sense something that is so overwhelming and so all encompassing. Like we got to go back to World War II, Dresden, Tokyo, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, all these different locations. They had civilian casualties, tremendous civilian casualties in the tens of thousands. And we just say, oh, well, we got to go after weapons sites and known enemy artillery and military targets and stuff like that. No, go after the civilians. And I can take it back again. Go to the 19th century. Go to the Civil War. Major General William Tecumseh Sherman. He had three things, three main components of war. He had the least amount of people die on his side. That's the most important. He had the least amount of people actually die on the opposite side. There were actually more Northern deaths, more Union deaths than those killed than there were Confederates, if you do your math. And also there were very little casualties on the civilian side. What he did was, tear up have his men tear up the railway and heat it up and tear up the rail and wrap it around trees. They called it Sherman neckties. That was extraordinary. That's scorched earth. That's total war. That's horrible war. That's war is hell, as he was known to have stated. He may not have been the first person to say that, but he's probably the most famous person to ever state it. And he knew about this years, I think it was years, if not months in advance, before they even started civil war. He was telling the South, you don't want war. You don't want to do this. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. The Union will crush you. The North is a very peaceable people, but we are advanced. We can make a locomotive. We can make entire building complexes. We can make, I'm paraphrasing, but hardly a ball of yarn can you make or something. I'm paraphrasing a little bit more, but and he just cried. He just cried and cried and just was distraught at the fact that the South wanted to fight, and he knew that he had to do it on his terms. He boxed up and presented as a gift the city of Savannah to Abraham Lincoln for Christmas. He of course is famous for his Atlanta raid. He turned ATL to ashes, tinder, and litter. So everybody might say, "Oh, well, that was in the past. It's not that we didn't." No, it's all about principle. The principles are still alive today. The principles of war. Demonstrating yourself as someone that is efficacious and can get the job done and do it well and do it with the least amount of casualties on everybody's side. You're not trying to just kill people just to kill people. You're trying to kill people if it is necessary. But what Sherman did was he by disrupting the railroad lines, he stopped the food, he stopped the ammunition, he stopped the bandages. A lot of people say the beans, bullets, and band-aids of the war. He stopped the uniform factories. He set fire to that. His men set fire to all these different locations. William Tecumseh Sherman is still, if you go to certain areas in the South, if you say his name, people look at you like you're crazy or you're saying a blasphemous thing. You're going against the will of God, and there is no God. But if you're going against, you're saying something that's evil or something that's detrimental to life. So call it Department of War, call it Department of kill everyone that goes against the United States of America. Call it whatever you will. Just make sure you're protecting individual rights, and that's the only thing that has to be said about that. Hey, I'd like to thank everybody that came through here. I think it was just Rick James and King Hazy that I saw in the live chat. I appreciate both of you. Thank you very much for supporting me. And I will see you sometime probably tomorrow. Thank you very much. Take care.